savage beast. Fuck the world, I will deny you.
Beautiful. Like it was, and we just sat back and just watched like the two
Holy
of them.
shit. Dude, I'm pretty sure Blag's there.
Holy shit! Holy shit! God damn!
Atomized, terrorizing, mesmerizing. Fuck the world, I will deny you. I will deny, will deny. This one for everyone. It's time to have some fun with it. Man from Galilee. No time for chastity. That would have to be my dream. Bleed the Nazarene. This one is free. Fuck the world, I will deny you. I will deny. Atomizing, terrorizing, mesmerizing. Fuck the world, I will deny you. I will deny, will deny. Nobody loves me, nobody cares. And when I die, there won't be nobody there. Nobody loves me, nobody cares. And when I die, I wanna die, I wanna die. Fuck the world, I will deny you. I will deny, atomize, terrorize, and mesmerize it. Fuck the world, I will deny you. I will deny, will deny. I will deny. I will deny. I will deny.
How's it going, man?
Yeah, man. Ready for action.
Oh, dude.
Okay, I was just all calm, cool, and collected, and now I'm not.
I went to pack a bowl and I looked up. I'm like, there's a third person.
I wish I was doing the same.
Oh, damn. Fuck, man. It is good to see you.
Okay, well, I'm Dave. That's Jim.
I'm Jim. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, nice to see you.
And how are you today, Blag?
I feel strong. I feel ready.
You look good, man.
You guys sent me about 20 emails about this, so you better have some shit ready to go here.
All right, man.
I didn't know that it was like actually. I thought it was just someone was playing a joke on me or something like that. And I was just like, fuck. And then when it like you said, yeah, for sure, I was like, oh shit.
Well, here I am. Fire away, dude. You got
all right.
You got limited time.
I think you're actually one of the most interesting people to talk to right now because, in all honesty, it ain't no bullshit that the Dwarves are fucking legends, and not just like punk, but you've managed to tackle every style of music, down to rap, down to all of it. You fucking walk, you talk the talk and you walk the walk. And now, like, I wonder what you think of the social climate today. Honestly, like, what if the Dwarves came out today? People would be like,
it's funny because people ask me about that, right? And I think what they don't understand is that, like, from the very beginning, I mean, from the first couple of shows we played, even when we were a 60s garage band with paisley ties and Beatle boots, we were just getting in shit with people every fucking time. And nobody ever invited us into their fucking reindeer games. I mean, we were fucking out of everything always, you know? So it's so funny to me when people go, oh, you know, how would it work now when people just don't accept this kind of shit? I'm like, people never accepted this kind of shit, man. Okay.
All right.
Welcome to my fucking world.
Well, and you got 86 horror stories come out. So like what, 35 some years pretty much?
Yeah, we're 35 years deep now, 36, I guess. So, you know, it's pretty remarkable.
It is. And the fact that like you guys never fucking asked permission to become who you are. You're like,
the legend was sort of born when we were much more kind of basic, and it was sort of like we always had a musical vision, and there's always kind of more music there than people give us credit for, but like, you know, there was just so much chaos at those shows. There's so much violence, there's so much weirdness, and it was mainly because we we would excite that kind of passion in people, but none of us were like fighters, and we didn't have a crew, so there wasn't some crew. You know, all the heavy metal bands like, my crew is going to fight your crew. You know, I mean, it was like we just kind of showed up at places, went nuts, and everybody,
no one knew what to do. Eh?
Yeah, everybody just thought they were under attack, and we'd get people attacking us, and you know, it was just crazy. And we didn't really know what to do with it. We would just kind of, you know, once the show was over,
it's Dionysian,
like,
is it not? It's truly Dionysian in the absolute sense of the term. Like,
that's a good,
I actually would say the dwarves make Dionysus tremble.
I'm with you.
You're like, what the fuck did I make here? I made a rock too heavy for me to lift. One thing I've also been very interested about is that you guys were on Sub Pop. That's how I first ever saw you guys, man. Was a VHS tape. It was a Sub Pop video, and the song Drugstore was on there.
Yeah, the Sub Pop connection was a big deal for us, and it brought us to a lot of people's attention. But because we were more like a punk band, we didn't really fit that genre. And so, you know, I think there were something like 12 or 13 bands signed to Sub Pop in over the first 5 years or so of the label, and every single one of them got a major label deal except for the Dwarves, you know, who were the band, you know, constantly left out of everything. You know, like I say, man, I mean, it was just too much too soon. People couldn't handle it. And then I think the other thing that freaked people out at big labels was then they would talk to me, and, you know, during that era, and I think even now, you know, people are very comfortable with like a fucked up rock star who's all drugged out and doesn't know what they're doing, because then they feel like they can manipulate them, you know. But we were
that's
sort of
not you in any way.
What?
That's not you in any way.
Right. You see, we were sort of this combination of too smart to fool us, but, you know, we played kind of dumb music and appealed to dumb people. And so it was very like, people didn't really want to, you know, combine those things. Go, okay, I'm going to do business with this guy that actually understands what's going on. But at the same time, it's not like an easy pop slam dunk, you know, like, what are we going to do, you know? So
no shit. And like, I actually got a good chuckle trying to think of you with all the Sub Pop bands.
I hung out with those bands, you know, that wanted to hang out with me. We weren't kind of snooty about like, oh, you're a different genre than us, we can't hang out with you. You know, it was kind of like I hung out with whoever was cool and whatever was going on.
Did you guys ever play with the Gits?
I believe we did. I think there's a poster of us with them. If we didn't, then certainly Mia was at a couple shows of ours, and we were friendly with people around the Comet Tavern and these places. Honestly, I can't exactly remember everybody we played with anymore, because a lot of bands kind of.
Just a curious question I had, because I'm a giant fan of the Gits as well.
Well, Mia was a great front person. It was a terrible shame what happened to her, and I don't think we ever really got an answer about that. It was very sad.
Well, they did eventually arrest this Jesus guy.
Oh, is that right?
It was the first DNA case, I think, in Washington.
Wow. Yeah. It was a tragedy. It was terrible. You know, I'm kind of heartless in some ways. You know, if I hear that you died on dope, I don't really feel sorry for you, because hey, that's on you. You know, but when people just randomly get murdered,
especially right, like what was it, the day after she got signed or something?
Yeah.
I feel you're such above the spectrum of that whole Seattle scene. The Dwarves are something you cannot pin on a board, but some of the bands that you know, like you know, like you said, we're talking the Gits and Nirvana and stuff like that. Did you play shows with Nirvana at all?
Yeah, we played with Nirvana, the Melvins, and the Derelicts in Seattle. So it's kind of like ground zero of fucking, you know, grunge. And it was.
So Jason Everman was probably on guitar too then.
You know, I don't remember that, because Saltpeter got hit with a bottle and I had to go with him to the emergency room. I don't think I actually saw those guys that night, till I had to go back and get the money and started fighting with everybody. Again, that was another part of what would happen with the Dwarves, when it might have behooved us to kind of kiss bands' asses and be nice to them. If anybody was bullshit to us, we let them know. And that kind of cost us a lot, you know. I'm sure if I would have licked Kurt Cobain's balls sufficiently at that show, you know, perhaps the trajectory of my career could have been different. You know, I was just not playing that, you know. But
I don't know, man.
I think he was a great songwriter, and really, it's a shame that he's gone, you know. But it's like, you know, you pays your money, you takes your chance, man. This is rock and roll, you know. It's like, don't do dope. Do I need to fucking tattoo it on your face? I saw a few too many people who had a lot of money and a lot of fans and a lot of management and a lot of lawyers and a lot of publicists and a lot of record labels, and I had none of those things. So if you were so sad and needed to stick a spike in your face, then okay, you know, you could have been me, who didn't get jack shit
And happy as fuck.
you know, and I managed to stay happy and live, you know. So it was very hard for me as the years went on to scrape up a lot of sympathy for the dope casualties. I get it, and I'm sad for their families and all that good stuff. I'm a human being, you know, but it's like, you know, our game is not that fucking difficult to figure out, you know.
More fatigue, right? Like, you gotta love your fate. Like,
yeah, I don't hate people like that. I don't put them down, but I also don't put it in the realm of tragedy.
Yeah.
Tragedy is when something random happens. Tragedy is when you happen to be in the World Trade Center on 9/11. Like, that's a tragedy, you know. You know, it's like, I'm going to stick a spike in my arm every day to try and feel better for years on end. Gee, you know, what could go wrong?
Another thing I wanted to touch on with you that I'm just fascinated with is faking he who's death.
Faking? Do you know something I don't know? I haven't seen him in years.
No, I understand he's Walt Disney brought back from cryogenic freezing.
Yeah, I was sure he was dead. This is good news. Maybe we can get him rolling again.
What in Sub Pop scientists didn't accept your evidence that it was still him?
You know, I mean, that's a whole story. You know,
it's one of the best things.
It's like, basically, the best. You know, part of what I got a lot of heat on afterwards was that it was supposed to be a mockery of Cobain and all these other people. He hadn't died yet. He hadn't died yet. You know, so several people died in the scene, and I made that joke, and you know, it's yeah, I really dig it, because that was back when, you know, you didn't sort of have the internet to help you make something like that. You know, you had to organically take off, you know, and
it's poetic terrorism at its finest.
Yeah. So, I mean, that to me was all very funny. I did lose a few friends over that, because there were, you know, we kept a straight face on everything, and some people got very upset, you know, which I can see. I mean, it is a little inhumane, but that was part of what the band was about, you know, like once this kind of came up, it was just sort of like, okay, you know, we're gonna do this.
But did he like have to hide out for a bit or something?
No, we just, everything kind of fell apart for the band, and I thought I could do a solo thing. And by the time I had it recorded several years later, it was like, fuck it, let's just make this a Dwarves record. And that was really the record that became Young and Good Looking, which turned out to be our most popular record, and sort of the one that sort of morphed us into more of a pop punk sort of a group that could do a more listenable record. So
back of my go-kart, yeah, I'll give you once to know completely what others so discreetly are doing in the dark. I mean, 'cause it's so easy, yeah, it's so easy to end it now before we even start. I'll give you once and one time only, and then I'll leave you lonely, and then I'll break your heart.
Things all kind of happened for a reason. That was sort of a period when things died down and were resurrected. And I think we kind of got lucky in that people really, you know, picked up on Green Day and The Offspring and bands that were more similar to our genre. You know, when I was able to get songs like Everybody's Girl and One Time Only, you know, that were much poppier than what we'd done in the past. It you know, that sort of changed the dynamic, and California all of a sudden discovered the Dwarves, you know, 10 years after we'd moved there. The pop punk explosion in the 90s sort of lifted us forward, because people at least would be like, oh, this sounds something similar to what I'm listening to, you know.
Even rapping, that blew my mind.
Well, I appreciate that. I love hip hop music. I've been listening to it for a long time. I wasn't there for the beginning of it, mind you, but by the mid 80s, I'd caught on like, oh, this is actually the new cool shit. And since I always consider myself mainly a lyricist, you know, rock lyrics just got so bad in the Pearl Jam era. All of the cool lyrics were coming from hip hop. So I was just absorbing that shit. But again, the difference was, you know, most of the guys who were absorbing it were like, yo, and then they put on a baseball cap backwards and it was like, what up, G? You know, and I was just like, no, I'm not doing any of that, but I can rap a track, you know, and that was the skill, you know. I mean, I'm glad you said that about all the different genres, because to me, that's really the next phase of the Dwarves, right? There was the, you know, garage phase, and then there was the blood, guts, and pussy phase. And the next phase, you know, was kind of, oh, here's a bunch of pop punk songs. But the thing that happened during all that thing was that I said, I like all kinds of genres of music, you know, and I need to find somebody that can help me bring all of these things out, you know. And by the time it got to Come Clean, we were sequencing drums and doing things. And really the guy that helped me do that was Eric Valentine. He was such a brilliant guy. And he was clearly on this other trajectory of like gonna be a hit producer. So whatever Blag did didn't make any fucking difference to Eric Valentine where he was going. It was obvious to me where he was going. The thing that he did for me that was so great was he took on a quote unquote non-commercial group. And usually guys like that with the chops to make a hit record, they're only looking for hit artists. And they don't even just look for hit artists. They look for hit artists that are signed with a big agent, signed with a big manager, gonna go places. That's how those guys generally make their choices. But me and Eric met at a very pivotal time for him when he wasn't a big producer yet. So I just lucked into that guy, you know, through a friend and said, I know a guy with a Neve board. So I walk in there, and after about 3 or 4 days of working with this guy, I just turned to him and I go, dude, you're like Mozart, you know, like, will you be my producer? Will you help me? You know? And you know, he was gonna break, but he hadn't broken. It took about a year after I met him for him to break. And by that time I'd brought a bunch of punk bands to him like FYP, and, you know, and just like was keeping his studio busy and telling him how great he was, because I was so happy. I finally had somebody to sit with me in a studio and go, that drum part's not right. That's not the right beat. This song isn't in the right key. This isn't what you're supposed to be doing. And suddenly somebody kind of showed me what producers do. And I had never seen it. I'd never experienced it. I knew in an abstract way what they did. But, you know, Eric wasn't my producer. I was still the producer. He was just the engineer. But I realized very quickly, like, you need to listen to this guy. This is the guy who knows what the fuck he's doing.
Speaks a good language, yeah.
Doing the Bluegrass album, what brought that on? That was it was incredible. Like it was, and I truly believe that a true musician has to appreciate all genres. You may not like it, you may not get it, but you have to be able to appreciate it. And I listened to that album, and I was like, where did it come from?
I was brought up by very musically omnivorously, you know. So I was listening to Frank Zappa when I was 10 years old. I was listening. My parents were taking me to see Gilbert and Sullivan and the Music Man and Guys and Dolls, and my mom liked the Bee Gees, and my brother liked, you know, the art, you know, to 20-minute John Coltrane sax solos. I mean, I was just inundated with every different kind of music. And I think that's what made me who I am. The one thing that I did that was kind of smart was I was inundated with all this great music. But by the time I was about 16 or 17, I'd kind of made the connection that I wasn't talented enough to perform that kind of music. So I knew that I had to find people who could do what I was trying to do. And so I've always been open to that, always been open to other people writing songs. You know, Saltpeter was one of my earliest collaborators, and he always wrote songs. I wasn't one of those guys that tried to take over the band and write all the songs myself and do everything. I mean, I was sort of naturally the leader guy, but I really knew that I needed everybody else to do what they could do, because I couldn't tell a drummer what the fuck to do. I didn't know, you know, so I had my ideas about
I remember reading or seeing you saying that you want the guys in your band to outdo you. You don't want to just
right. That was part of it too. Even live, I would say, hey man, you know, if you're joining this band and you just stand there, you're not doing it right. You need to try and upstage me, and good fucking luck. And meanwhile, I'm trying to upstage,
which makes a great band.
right? And meanwhile, I'm trying to upstage the naked guy with a wrestler mask on.
Yeah.
Right? So that was how I did it with my band. It was like 100 games. It was like, you think you can stand on this stage with us? Be my fucking guest, dude. But to get back to Bluegrass,
yeah.
So I always loved old blues records, old, you know, all kinds of records, and I went through a sort of bluegrass and what preceded bluegrass, which was sort of the country blues of the 20s and 30s, very, you know, old-fashioned stuff. So I went through a big phase of that, and I said, okay, for my first kind of side project solo thing, well, the first one was Penetration, which was kind of a glam, snotty glam band. And then I said, I just want to do something totally different, you know, this kind of okay bluegrass group from Berkeley, and I kind of commandeered them to do a bunch of songs of mine. But again, I had no help with the production, and I thought the songs were very well written. I thought things were well performed. I thought I sang it okay, but there's a huge gap in that record, which is the harmony vocals.
Hello.
Which every bluegrass record is full of harmony vocals, and that record's got like none. You know, so I was just like, what? And I knew afterwards, like, I guess I fucked up here and I didn't quite get it right, you know, so.
Sharon Needles was a girl I knew. She was a girl that looked a lot like you. Sharon Needles was a girl that I knew.
That's kind of what happens when you don't have producers and nobody's helping you and you have these weird ideas. They kind of halfway work or 3/4 of the way work. But, you know, for me, Early Grace is like a great record, but it'll always be kind of unfinished in my mind. You know, I was like, you know, a year later, I was like, harmony vocals, that's it. You know, meanwhile, the record was already out.
In songs like Saturday Night, I could hear that bluegrass in it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can't think of the name. What's the one where Johnny knows he's dying, but first he wants to come, oh yeah.
Yeah, Runaway.
Sliced her wrist, she was a beauty queen. Johnny is huffing glue, cause there's nothing else to do. Susie smeared her lipstick, it tastes like daddy's cum. Johnny's in a back room getting sucked off by his mom.
That was actually written by He Who Cannot Be Named.
Was it?
Yeah, you know, people tend to give me the credit for all of the Dwarves song, which I love. You know, it's like, okay, give me the credit. But, you know, the reality is that it's just always been a songwriter band. He who writes music, writes lyrics. You know, he who and I have collaborated a lot, where he wrote the chords and I wrote the vocal melody and the lyrics. But you know, he who writes great lyrics himself, he's written a lot of great lyrics. Saltpeter wrote a lot of great music and lyrics. In the modern version of the band, you know, Nick Oliveri is a great singer and songwriter on his own. And the Fresh Prince of Darkness, you know, the sort of stalwart guitar player of the band for the last like 25 years. You know, he's a great songwriter too. And all these guys can write music and lyric. So like with a song like Runaway, you would just assume that I wrote that. And yet, you know, I added a couple lyrics here and there, and I kind of made the arrangement. I made it like an acoustic-y campfire song, but you know, that was He Who, you know? So it's very like, you know, I've always felt kind of lucky to have a bunch of talented guys that could write songs. You know, I think that's part of why the Dwarves come off so interesting, because most bands, it's like one guy's writing all the songs, so everything sounds the same, you know?
Well, I think they lucked out having you as a frontman, because there's like, you're up there, and I don't mean this to sound odd, but you're up there with like Tom Waits, Ozzy Osbourne, like,
oh, well, I
like there comes a point, like the Dwarves themselves are too, where you can't really, I think, compare bands. There's some bands that just are what they are, and they've been what they are for so fucking long that they're like, they become almost a star in the sky.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean,
you and he who are terrifying people. You really are.
I've seen him do some very terrifying stuff. he's more terrifying than me, but he's a very kind person. He just, it was terrifying. Like I thought he was gonna die, you know? I mean, I was never as hardcore as what my band was, whereas there were guys in the band who were every bit as hardcore as what the band was, you know?
Something that there's a quote I read by Friedrich Nietzsche that reminded me of you as a frontman, which is one who seeks spirit lacks spirit. And I think when it comes to what your lyrics and what you represent with the Dwarves, I think that you can be taken for the Dionysian fury you are.
The more boring you agree to be, the more serious you're thought of as. And the more you only color within the lines of what you do and you don't try and do anything different, the more sincere you are. You know, so all of a sudden, you know, there's this great reward for not being interesting, for not changing. There's this great reward for, you know, always looking very sincerely at the camera and saying, I really care about all of you. You know what I mean? And it's like, that was never what I was interested in rock and roll at all. It never, you know, it's like, to me, and there's a lot of talented people who go down that path, but it's like, I saw Bruce Springsteen on TV the other day. I mean, it's like, Bruce Springsteen, a good example of like somebody, you know, he's talented. He can write a song and people love him. And I get that, right? I'm not hating on that, but that was a side of rock and roll like that. Like, I'm sincere, you know, I'm a sincere working class guy. And it's like, motherfucker, you've been a multi-millionaire now for over 50 years. And I'm supposed to believe that you're digging a ditch or working as a barista somewhere, whatever. I mean, it's like the sincerity is so hollow from the sincere people. You know what I mean? But it's like, there's always this kind of reverse thing. Because I would come out and say, I just want to fuck sluts. People would say, oh man, you know, that's just, how could you even say that? It's like, meanwhile, there's guys, you know, Gary Glitter's behind the scenes, you know, going,
oh yeah,
you know, I you know, rock and roll, rah rah. He never said anything about fucking little sluts. Meanwhile, you know, he's going to Bangkok to try and fuck 10-year-old. You know what I mean? It's like, we're always trying to be this thing that's supposed to be so sincere, and almost always it's complete fucking horseshit.
For all these years, 35 years, I mean, here, Dago abortions were brought up on obscenity charges for an album cover. How have you guys made it through?
They should have been brought up on charges for how they play music. Yeah.
How have you guys made it through with no, like, I mean, no charges, no. Unless I'm mistaken, I haven't found anything. Is there anything we don't know?
It is interesting. One thing that really bummed me out was there was this big Burger Records sex scandal, which was all bullshit and really didn't have anything to do with the guys who actually run Burger Records. Like, you'd hear people telling stories and it was like, this guy from a band molested me, you know? And it was like, oh, okay, what does that have to do with Burger Records? It's like, he told me to meet him at the parking lot of Burger Records, and then he took me somewhere and he fucked me. You know, it was like, wait a minute, what does that have to do with Burger Records? Like, that's the big smoking gun, you know? I mean, there was all these kind of bogus stories where a woman would be like, you know, I was 17 and a guy who was 19 who played in a band that made a cassette with Burger Records fucked me. It's like, okay, you know, this doesn't sound like a tragedy. I'm not trying to belittle people who actually suffer and are actually attacked by somebody, but if you're not, don't try and ride on those people's pain. You know, there's a lot of people pushing themselves as victims. But yeah, it was like Burger Records has this sex scandal. The Dwarves have more records on Burger than anybody, and yet the only band that wasn't involved in the sex scandal was us. And I'm just like, and I'm just like, I must be old, you know, because what the fuck? Like, I don't even get in the sex scandal. Come on. You know? When people say to me, when you put these naked women on your albums, you're exploiting them and fucking them over. I tell them, I'm friendly with most of the women who are on our records. I paid them. They were anxious to do it. They loved it. They enjoy it. I keep in touch with some of them. We're friendly, and some of them don't like me or have changed their mind. I've had women call me up 10 years later and go, I don't want to be naked in that video anymore. And it's like,
Really?
I'm sorry, I don't know what I can do for you. You know, it's like,
Yeah, my time machine is broken.
yeah, I mean, it's like you know, but people are entitled to feel the way that they want. And again, you know, I'm not here to you know, disparage anyone else's experience, but it's like I'm also not going to be silenced out of guilt. A lot of people are carrying around a lot of guilt and a lot of weirdness. You know, I certainly carry around guilt for certain things in my life. I'm not guilt free, but you know, for the art that I've made, I'm not apologizing for anything.
Fuck no.
I'm just not.
Did you ever imagine you would become seriously the punk legend you are? When you were a kid, were you ever brushing your teeth and you looked in the mirror and thought, I'm gonna fuck this shit up?
You know, from about the time I was about 13 or so, and I was obsessed with Frank Zappa and Monty Python's Flying Circus and, you know, Saturday Night Live and John Belushi and everything that was happening then. I knew that I wanted to be a performer, and I knew that music was something that I really loved. And I knew I've had a pretty solid drive pretty much since I started high school about what I was going to do. I didn't think it would take the form that it ultimately did. I thought it would be more sophisticated forms of music because that's what I was into and could understand. But punk rock really saved me in that way. The Ramones really saved me in that way. And the Ramones were so important to me because when I heard the Ramones, I was able to play the Ramones and I was able to sing the Ramones. And so finally, for the first time in my life, it wasn't like, wow, I got this clarinet in my hand. It doesn't sound that great. Or wow, I got this acoustic guitar. How come it doesn't sound like the Beatles song I'm trying to play? It was like, okay, this actually sounds something like the Ramones, what I'm playing. You know, and so it meant everything to me because it gave a musical horizon to a person who's not very talented. The Stooges meant a lot to me. The Cramps meant a lot to me. Simple bands that played simple shit that I could understand. And basically, like, my whole thing with the Dwarves has been working outward from there. You know, I started very simple. I made it more complex, but you know, actually we started a little more complex with the 60s stuff, and then we kind of honed it down to Blood Guts, where it was like simple. And then it just kind of blossomed out from there. But, you know, I knew that I wanted to do music and be an entertainer. I kind of made a pivotal weird move at one point because I was in New York in the mid 80s. I had been living on my own for a while and was totally broke, and I literally cleaning toilets at MIT. So I'm cleaning the toilets of kids that are the same age as me. And, you know, it was like pretty humbling. So I was like, fuck it, I better go to school. So I went to school for 1 year, and during that year, I was plotting how to get out and go play rock and roll. As soon as I got in there, I was like, what am I doing? You know, but it was like, you know, long story short, I mean, I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew that I had to assemble a team to do it because I wasn't going to be able to do it on my own. So after a brief period of kind of going, oh, I'm going to try and go to school, get my life together, do something, I realized almost immediately, like, that's not going to work.
During the pandemic, what have you guys been able to jam at all or write?
So during the pandemic, I basically, you know, I've been keeping in touch with the band, but we haven't been playing. The really exciting thing that I did was I recorded an entire solo album, and it's kind of an Americana record. I think it's a very interesting record. You know, it's not a punk record at all, but the lyrics are still Blag, but it's, you know, very kind of country inflected, novelty songs, torch songs, different kinds of things that I've generally done. Somewhat analogous to that Candy Now record that I did a while back, but this is better production and really interesting. And I just, I think I'm going to have kind of a solo thing that comes next. I'm going to kind of spin off on, you know, and when shows return, of course, you know, I want to do the Dwarves, and the Dwarves are raring to go, you know, but it's like, it's been a year and there's no sign of shows again. So I'm glad that, yeah, this solo record of mine, I think, is going to blow minds, man. And the other big thing I did, I recorded a bunch of songs with Lisa from the Bell Rays. Me and a guy named Andy Carpenter made a bunch of tracks for her. And she is an amazing singer with such depth to her vocal. I mean, it's very, you know, you sitting in the studio with her and you really feel like you're with someone who is just in command of their voice and can do anything they feel like doing, you know. So
pretty mesmerizing.
Yeah, so those were kind of the two things that I did this year, and I'm very stoked to have the solo thing and to get this Lisa stuff out. And you know, I feel lucky, man. I mean, I'm pretty old, and to get a new record that was kind of a revelation and that I felt like was a whole new style again, you know, was really I wasn't expecting it. So that was great, and I owe a lot of that to, you know, I told you how much Eric Valentine meant to the earlier Dwarves. I mean, that's really what Andy Carpenter means to me. He came in with me on Born Again and started mixing, and he's now recorded and mixed all of the Dwarves records since then. Dwarves invented rock and roll and Take Back the Night, and he's just a brilliant guy. So he really helped me make this solo record, and I feel great about it. You know, so once I get that out, you know, we gotta talk again.
But, oh,
absolutely! Holy shit!
You know that I've never talked to anyone before in my life.
Yeah.
No,
well,
seriously.
I'm glad I could be number one, man. I really appreciate you guys being interested in me and asking some questions. And you know, feel free to post this shit up on the Dwarves Instagram and all that stuff, and I'll carry it on. You know, man.
Well, thank you for being so like absolutely wonderful to chat to, man. In all honesty, like. And it's so funny because I know you terrify people, but you actually are such a genuine.
Depends if you fuck with me or not.
Yeah. Thank you so
much.
much.
Legend, brother.
I dig Canada. It is a very underrated place. And we're supposed to come back and do the Pooza Fest there. My friend Hugo, a great guy, and he's got us on the Pooza Fest, you know, had us on for 2020, but of course nothing happened. So I don't know. Hopefully they'll do it this year. You never know. But I love Canada. It's such beautiful women up there.
Yeah. And you guys can crash at our place.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna run. I've got about 4,000 other questions. And
next time.
Next time.
Thanks a lot for talking to me, you guys.
Thank you so much.
We don't want to hold you up.
Bye-bye.
Don't you wanna go up and never come back down? Don't you wanna be lost, yeah, never to be found? Don't you wanna be here in the morning, gone by night without a warning, free to be riding on the road? And it's a long, long way to the end. Yeah, it's a long, long way, and it's time that we begin. Don't you wanna be free to be riding on the road? I wanna be free to be riding on the road. Just put the past and future behind you. Thank the Lord, he'll never mind you. Free to be riding on the